The eviction notice clung to the rusted trailer door like a silent execution order, curling at the edges beneath the cold October wind. Maya Coleman stood barefoot on the warped wooden steps, her fingers trembling as she peeled the paper free. 72 hours. That was the measure of survival the world had given her. Inside, the soft breathing of her 6-year-old daughter drifted through the thin aluminum walls, unaware that everything they had built was now scheduled to disappear. Maya pressed the paper to her chest like it might stop her heart from breaking apart. She had already run once in her life, escaped a marriage built on fear and bruises, rebuilt herself in a town that promised nothing but anonymity and exhaustion. Now even that fragile refuge was being taken. That night, long after Sophie drifted into sleep beneath a quilt stitched by forgotten hands, Maya sat at the tiny kitchen table scrolling listings she couldn't afford. Then the impossible appeared. $500 for a cave cabin buried into a mountain 40 miles from town. No utilities, no protection, no promises. Only stone, silence, and isolation. Every instinct screamed danger. But desperation numbs. Warning bells. By dawn, she borrowed the last money she could find, packed what little they owned, and drove straight toward the edge of nowhere, unaware that the mountain was waiting with secrets older than her fear. The cave cabin greeted them, with a heavy stillness that pressed against Maya's ears as soon as the door groaned open. Cold stone swallowed sound. Dust drifted in pale ribbons through lantern light, and the walls glittered faintly with trapped minerals like forgotten stars. Sophie's eyes filled with wonder instead of fear. "It's a mountain castle," she whispered, instantly transforming danger into magic with the certainty only children possess. They slept that first night beside the fireplace, wrapped in borrowed warmth, eating soup from dented cans and pretending this wasn't desperation, was adventure. Over the next days they found a hidden spring, patched broken boards, and learned the rhythm of isolation. Then on the 5th night, Sophie jumped in the back room and laughed at the strange echo beneath her feet. Maya's heart changed its rhythm instantly. Would that sounds hollow, never lies? She brushed away dirt, noticing that dust was disturbed. When she pried up the first board, darkness opened beneath it. Metal glinted in rows stacked with perfect intention. Dozens of sealed steel boxers slept inside the handcrafted vault. Maya lifted one with shaking arms and unlatched it. Bundles of $100 bills stared back in perfect bands, untouched by time. Another box revealed gold bars stamped with cold authority. Leather portfolios waited beneath them like silent witnesses. Wonder lasted only a heartbeat before terror crushed it. This wasn't fortune. This was something hidden for a reason, powerful. Enough to bury it alive. Sleep never truly returned after that night. The mountain whispered in unfamiliar frequencies, and every settling beam sounded like footsteps. Maya memorized every shadow, every breath of wind that pushed through the pines. During the day she worked at the diner with a smile nailed in place. And at night she guarded the silence with fear clenched in her stomach. At the town library she uncovered the truth inch by inch through yellowed headlines and trembling fingers. A 1976 armored transport robbery. 3 guards killed. $45 million vanished. Arthur Brennan disappeared into Montana the same year. Her cave cabin had been his. The fortune beneath her floor wasn't abandoned, it was evidence. The weight of it pressed into her lungs until breathing hurt. That evening, Sophie whispered about dreams of a man with no face who searched the dark with angry hands. Maya told herself it was imagination fed by strange walls and too much quiet, but her own dreams mirrored it now. She inspected the bonds. And cash by lantern light, seeing dates from the late 70s, serial numbers marching in perfect order. She replaced the boxers with shaking care and hid one container deep in the rear shadows, not to keep. She told herself, just to survive. Long enough to figure out what was right. But guilt entered with it and refused to leave. The mountain no longer felt silent. It felt awake. The call came from a number without a name, and the voice on the other end spoke her identity with surgical precision. A private investigator. He knew she owned Arthur Brennan's property. He suspected she had found what had been lost since 1976. Panic hollowed her chest before words could form. She sent Sophie to a friend's house under a lie stitched with shaking hands and pushed heavy. Furniture against the cabin door like it could stop fate itself. When the investigator arrived, he spoke not of greed, but of the men who died. Fathers, sons, young men with futures that ended on cold asphalt. When she showed him the vault, he did not touch the money. He bowed his head like it was a grave. Then he warned her there had been 4 robbers. One escaped. One might still be alive. That truth had barely settled when a second stranger arrived. A lawyer carrying a confession written decades earlier by Arthur Brennan himself. The letter admitted everything. The theft, the blood, the 30 years of hiding beside stolen ghosts. And with it came another revelation, a clean trust set aside for whoever returned the money. $250,000. Away. Out without blood on her hands. The mountain seemed to tighten around them all as Maya stood between ruin and redemption with trembling breath. Choice is heavier than gold when it carries consequence. Maya felt the mountain pressing against her spine as if it were waiting to see which direction her soul would turn. Keep the hidden fortune and live hunted, or surrender it and walk forward, with nothing but truth. When the investigator confirmed that the missing 4th robber may still be alive and watching, certainty hardened inside her. The money had never been freedom. It was a cage built of shadows. That night, rain shifted the mountain's underbelly, and water began to crawl into the hidden cavity. Maya worked through panic and exhaustion, hauling boxers into dry corners, sealing paper in plastic, wrapping gold in oilcloth found among Arthur's tools. Dawn broke over the crime she never committed, but still carried. The fortune now lay exposed in the open room like a condemned testimony. Sophie appeared at the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes and staring at the glittering floor of impossible wealth. Maya knelt and folded her daughter into her chest with a grip that promised more than words ever could. No matter what happens, she whispered into soft hair, I will keep you safe. It wasn't money Sophie needed. It wasn't even stability. It was a mother willing to choose what was right even when fear offered comfort. And that choice had finally been made. The authorities arrived quietly, without spectacle. No sirens, no cameras, only measured steps and careful hands that treated every box like a grave marker. Serial numbers were logged. Gold was weighed. Bonds were authenticated. The story that had haunted families for nearly half a century finally received its ending. Maya's name never entered public record. The investigator kept his promise, and the mountain swallowed the rest. The stolen money was recovered. Closure returned to graves that had waited too long. The trust activated as promised, transferring clean money without attaching chains. Enough for oxygen, enough for escape, enough for a future that did not breathe. Maya and Sophie left the mountain before nightfall without looking back. Weeks later, Sophie slept in a real bed beneath warm blankets, in a quiet neighborhood where footsteps no longer echoed through stone. Maya returned to work by choice, not desperation. The diner became memory. The mountain became legend. But sometimes, In silence, Maya remembered Arthur Brennan, alone 20 miles from any witness, trapped beside wealth he could never touch without seeing blood. She remembered 3 guards who never grew old, and she understood at last what the mountain had taught her in its brutal stillness. Some fortunes don't save you. They test what kind of human you are when no one is watching. Time softened the sharpest edges, but it never erased the meaning. Sophie grew steadier in school, laughter replacing nightmares one season at a time. Maya built a life with windows that opened toward sunlight instead of rock. Yet sometimes in quiet moments, she would catch herself listening for echoes that were no longer there. The mountain had left a mark that money could not erase. She taught Sophie not about fear, but about why fear exists, because truth is heavy, and hiding it bends the soul. They planted trees in their new yard and watched them take root slowly, stubbornly, beautifully. Maya learned that survival does not mean running forever. Sometimes it means stopping long enough to face what you've been trying to outrun. In letters from the investigator, she learned that the families of the fallen guards had finally placed flowers with answers beside headstones that once held only questions. Justice had arrived late, but it had arrived whole. And in that knowledge, something inside her finally rested. Sophie once asked her why they had left the mountain so quickly. Maya only smiled and answered carefully, because some places are meant to teach you, not keep you. And she meant every word. The weight that once bent her spine had turned into something steadier now. Not pride, not relief, something quieter. Responsibility carried correctly. Years later, Sophie would sit on the edge of her bed tracing old scars on her mother's hands, and ask gently why she never kept the fortune they found. Maya would look out the window toward open sky instead of stone and answer with a voice free of fear. She would tell her that money can rescue a life, but it can also ruin it depending on how it arrives. That stolen fortune had already taken 3 men and imprisoned another for 30 years in living solitude. Keeping it would only have continued the chain. She would explain that love cannot grow in a house built on buried harm, and Sophie, older now, would understand it in a way children eventually do, quietly, completely. Maya never returned to the mountain, but sometimes she dreamed of the cabin filled with light and empty of secrets. In those dreams, the floor was solid, the walls silent, and the air free of whispered guilt. She would wake from those dreams with calm instead of terror. The mountain had taken nothing from her in the end. It had given her the one thing she never believed she deserved after years of running: the right to stand still without fear behind her. What you return with integrity is worth far more than what you could ever keep in secrecy. The deepest treasure is not what you discover beneath the floor, but what you choose to carry forward.